Hi, Walt. How's it going? Folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you could take your seats, please. I'll go ahead and call the September 16th, 2019 meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order. Thanks very much for coming this evening. And our first item on the agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance. And I'm going to ask Walt and Lori to please lead us this evening. Thank you both. We'll move on to item three of our agenda, which is communications from the public. We do have three public hearings for this evening. So if you're here to speak on any of those public hearings, please wait until I call those specific agenda items. Anything else to share with the council now would be your opportunity. Name and address for the record when you approach the podium. Thanks.
Doug Petmeyer, TD&H Engineering, 450 Corporate Drive, Kalispell, and we are on the planning agenda for the Whitefish 57 project. And so I just wanted to let you guys know that I am here. So if you have any questions, we agree with the findings and the recommendations from staff. But I just want to let you guys know if you have any questions, I'll be here to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it. Rhonda.
Good evening, councilors and mayor. Rhonda Fitzgerald, 412 Lupfer. I am here to ask you all to consider the possibility of passing an ordinance prohibiting the use of mobile devices while driving a vehicle. And a lot of communities are grappling with this problem, and I think there's some technology that shields the driver from the device or whatever, so the passengers can be using theirs. Last week I was hit by a car, T-boned, while I was driving down Spokane, and from a stop sign at 4th, someone stopped and then drove directly into my car. And it is not possible to do that. So clearly there was some distraction going on. But when I spoke with the police about it, they said, well, it's not illegal. So we don't know if they were on a device. And we don't even find out if the device is active. I'm not talking about like handheld talking on your phone or texting, but just people put their cell phones and they look at them all the time. And after I was hit and lots of people saw this, the woman said, I didn't see you. I said, I have a bright red car, and you T-boned me. How is that possible? And she said, I didn't see you. And I started to think, well, probably not, because you probably weren't looking. And it's got me thinking, what if I was a pedestrian? What if I was a child? What if I was riding a bike? We're trying to promote walking and bicycling, which are less visible than a bright red car, and I think that it's getting pretty dangerous. And a lot of people mentioned to me that they have seen people doing unbelievably erratic things, and I'm thinking they're distracted. And so I just bring this to you. I don't have any further solution than to maybe look at some ordinance that limits operating a device while you're supposed to be operating a car, because the science says you can't do both. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhonda. Further public comment tonight? Mark.
Good evening. Mark Panacini, 214 2nd Street. I met with some of your planning and city attorney this week, and I have some bad news. I want it to not come as a surprise, and I thought I'd come and let you guys know. We've done everything we could to move the home on the corner of Lupfer and 2nd. And over the last 3-4 weeks, somebody has decided the home shouldn't be moved. They've cut all the floor joists in the home. As you see the steel beams going into the home, it was due to be moved last week. It was going to go down the road here on Second. We were going to give it to a nonprofit, and we can't do it now. We've gone to the extent of bidding it out and trying to put new joists through the whole house in place. It's not feasible for us. So when I say they cut the joist, they cut every joist on the outer walls and cut every other center joist in the home. It's not able to move. And we've opened an investigation with the police department. We're hoping that me coming here will stir up some activity, because we've done everything we can. I've got a lot of money and time sunk into moving the house. It's got to come down now. So I'm just letting you guys know, so it's not a surprise. We did our best, but it is going to be demoed.
When did this happen?
The inspectors were in there in June. Earth Tech is the asbestos inspection. They thoroughly go through the house. I mean, for asbestos in old homes like this. So in June, they went through it. In July, we demoed the one small home that was unsalvageable. It had to come down. Between middle of June and we hired a home mover to come in. On the 26th of August, he called me after starting to prep the house for the move and noticed the joists were cut. So there's about a 4 to 6 week window. Someone went in and spent a lot of time, and they knew what they were doing. Because the way they cut it, when they put the forks in to lift the home and move, the outer walls would have sheared out and collapsed. So anyone standing on the sides of the home could have been killed. That's not from me, that's from structural engineers that came over to the site, Malmquist. So anyway, we've opened an investigation with the police department. A number of the police officers have been through. I know they've maybe talked to quite a few people, I'm not sure. But why someone would do it when we were trying to move the house and save it is beyond us. So we're letting you guys know it's going to come down this week.
Well, thanks for taking the initiative to come let us know rather than us hearing it through the rumor mill in town. Appreciate it, and sorry that happened.
Point of privilege, please.
Yes, sir.
Are you able to save any of the joinery inside? I mean, there's some beautiful woodwork
We are.
inside.
We-
And I hope that you're able to do that rather
If
than,
you saw, people are pulling some windows out, doors, fixtures, we're giving those to people that can use them or resell.
okay.
They're in there pulling things out right now. As I drove by a little while ago, there were people in there.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
Unfortunate update, but appreciate it. Further public comment tonight? Any further comment from the public? How about volunteer board reports from the audience? Any volunteer board reports? How about the council? Not seeing any. We'll move on to our consent agenda. Any changes or additions to the September 3rd meeting minutes, or can I have a motion for approval? Richard?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Williams. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. We'll move on to item 6 of our meeting, which are our 3 public hearings. We'll start with item 6A, which is consideration of a request from Genevieve Preisman for a conditional use permit to construct an accessory apartment located at 537 West 3rd Street, the property zone WR2, which is our 2-family residential district. Wendy?
Good evening. So the request before you is a conditional use permit to construct an accessory apartment to the south of an existing single-family home. The accessory apartment will be located above a proposed 2-car garage at the rear of the subject property. The building will meet all setback, size, height requirements, and will access off of Caro Avenue. The property meets the minimum lot size. It's at 537 West 3rd Street, and again, currently developed with a single-family home. It's surrounded by residential uses, zone WR2, and has a growth policy designation of urban. It's served by all public services and facilities. Staff noticed adjacent landowners, advisory agencies, and placed a legal in the pilot. We did receive one anonymous letter, which is in your packet, that was not in support of the request. The project does comply with the growth policy and the zoning regulations. There's adequate area and meets all the access requirements. There's no environmental constraints and adequate parking can be met with the site. Sewer and water are available to the property, and it should not have a negative impact on the neighborhood and is similar to other surrounding structures. There's some accessory apartments in the neighborhood. The planning board held a public hearing on August 15th, and they recommended approval subject to 11 conditions that are found in your transmittal, and they are pretty much the standard ones you see with these. Can I answer any questions for you?
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy from the council? Any questions? Thanks, Wendy. We did advertise for a public hearing on item 6A of the agenda. Is the applicant or applicant's representative here, and is there anything to add to Wendy's report? Not seeing. Is there any public comment on this item? Any public testimony? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion. Ryan?
I would move to approve a request from Genevieve Preisman for a conditional use permit to construct an accessory apartment located at 537 West 3rd Street, Zone WR2, two-family residential, WCUP 19-13.
Thanks, Ryan. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, and those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Michelle? Which brings us on to item 6B, which will be our own resolution 19-30, a resolution revising water and wastewater service rates and policies for the city of Whitefish, and this is contained on page 131 of your packet. Craig?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. The city of Whitefish provides water and wastewater service to about 3,300 residential customers and approximately 330 commercial customers, both inside and outside of city limits. To address costs attributable to the various water and wastewater user types, the city distinguishes between several different service classes. The city's wastewater rates refer to 3 different service classes, as well as grinder and step users, and the city's water rate schedule distinguishes between 3 different service areas. Council adopted a resolution 13-29 back in October of 2013, stipulating that water and sewer rates will automatically be adjusted October 1st of each year based on the Consumer Price Index. However, the completion of a comprehensive rate study is typically recommended every 3 to 5 years, or if a major capital expense is planned within either the water or the wastewater system. Meeting both of those criteria, the city of Whitefish did retain AE2S to complete a water and wastewater financial plan and rate structure study back in May of 2015. This plan evaluated the equitability of the existing rate structure through a cost of service analysis, or a COSA, which measures the cost attributable to each of those user classes against the amount of revenue provided by each user class. The results demonstrate the difference between cost and revenue, and were used to develop the recommended rate approach that would work to align the COSA allocated costs and revenues with each planning period. Since that time, as we're all aware, significant capital needs for water have also been identified, and now a final funding plan for the wastewater plant has been solidified. So as a result, we worked with AE2S over the last couple of months to update the rate models for both the water and the wastewater system. This included a detailed review of operational expenses, revenues, and capital costs for each utility as compared to those projected in the original rate model. Moving forward, the city did order that a public hearing be held tonight to consider imposing these changes. A notice of the hearing, which is included in your packet, was mailed directly to customers on August 26th, and the notice was published on August 29th, September 4th, and September 11th. In addition to this notice, several other documents were placed on the city website to help answer questions that customers may have regarding the proposed changes. In terms of the financial requirements on this specific rate change, customers inside city limits with a 3/4-inch meter located in service class SC1 who use 6,000 gallons of water and sewer per month will see rate increases as follows. Water costs will increase 0.4% or approximately 24 cents from $61.32 to $61.56. Monthly sewer costs will increase 2.9% or approximately $1.91 from $64.77 to $66.88. Customers with a landscape or irrigation meter using 10,000 gallons per month will see an increase of 4.3% or approximately $2.10, going from $48.80 to $50.90. We did, as I mentioned, compare the 2015 rate study numbers with the new information that came forward from the water system financial plan, as well as the solidification of the wastewater treatment plant. And just to document a few of those changes, we noticed that account growth, water sales, and revenues are higher than projected. This is a good thing in all of those rate classes. Increased revenues will allow utility to project smaller rate increases in the near term. These rate increases, which are being shown tonight, are considerably less than those that were proposed in the 2015 rate study. Increased revenues will support efforts to build capital reserves that can be strategically used in the near term to keep necessary rate increases minimal. So in addition to this rate increase being lower than projected, we anticipate that will carry forward into future years. The growth has resulted in additional impact fee revenues available for the water treatment plant expansion and storage projects, again, a benefit to water ratepayers. And the cost of service-based rate increases have worked to increase equitability between user classes. Something that we've tried to do from the beginning is making sure that our water and wastewater rate classes are more aligned with the actual cost to service those areas. So I think the work that was done earlier this year, in addition to the rate study, really is showing an equitable rate increase for tonight's hearing. So based on these findings, it is the recommendation of staff that council adopt this resolution 19, somebody help me out.
30.
19-30, thank you. Changing the water and wastewater rates to those shown in the published notice.
Thanks, Craig. Any questions for Craig on his staff report? Not seeing any. Appreciate it, Craig. We did advertise for a public hearing on item 6B, which will be resolution 19-30. We'll hold that public hearing now. Anyone wishing to provide testimony, your name and address for the record when you approach the podium. Lori.
Lori Curtis, 683 Copperwood Court in Whitefish. I came tonight, as did my husband Walt, to thank the Public Works Director and the City of Whitefish for working hard to come up with what we believe is a reasonable, fair, and equitable solution to delivering our water delivery and water treatment needs. So we're here to support the resolution. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lori. Further public testimony on this item? Ma'am.
My name is Leora Moroka. I did visit once before. I live at 16 Pine Avenue. And obviously, I'm very unhappy with the water situation, or I wouldn't have been here last time. And now I'm back again. I don't really object so much to the water rates going up. I would like the builders to take a bigger portion of what it costs. After all, they're the persons who are making all the money. But when I feel like I grew up in Whitefish and somebody wants to limit my water supply, and we have 169 known and we don't want me to have a fish pond. I think that's fairly interesting. It goes into your second stage when you say, okay, you only want me to water once a week and has to be before 9 o'clock, after 5 o'clock. Unfortunately, those are times that I'm busy feeding dogs, feeding family. And then I have 6 koi in this pond that are between 12 and 17 inches. I know you don't want carp in your rivers. Koi are carp. This is more than $500 worth of fish. I guess the best way to take care of a fish is to freeze it, because fish's systems slow down as they get cold. So shall I throw these fish in my freezer so that I don't have to refresh the water in their pond because I live in the city of Whitefish, when we have all of these lakes and reservoirs, and I can't have my poor little fish? I do have 2 dogs. Nobody's asking me to get rid of them. Unfortunately, I wouldn't do that anyway. However, I think that all of these things that you have come up with for us who have lived here all of these years, we have in just 18, this is not this year, on Edgewood in Whitefish, we had 38 new starts. Whitefish Crossing had 60. North Valley Hospital has 247 units going in there. Alta Vista has 138. Monahan and Borman Road has 58. That's 548 starts last year. I guess those people got their water. That's nice. Do we take a bath only once a week, which was once upon a time recommended? Doctors for us old folks, by the way, say that we shouldn't take a bath every day. However, I guess if you work hard and you sleep with somebody, they wish you would. So I don't know how other people feel about the fact that their water is being cut down while we have all this huge influx of people coming into our valley. I don't mind growth, but I do mind my water being restricted, and I expected you people to take care of us, but you haven't. Unfortunately, an incumbent after any name on my ballot next year will not get my vote.
Thanks, Leora.
Thank you.
Further public comment this evening on this item?
I'm Linda Twite. I live at 156 Armory Road. And I was at the last meeting as well a year ago when we did the rate increase and heard a lot of the same comments being made. I, after the meeting, called Mr. Workman and asked him multiple questions about things that I didn't feel were answered here that night. I guess my biggest question is, he spoke last year about bringing in a consultant to find us groundwater. In this year, I've heard nothing about any of that. Where is that process?
This typically isn't a give and take or Q&A session, but we are investigating alternative water sources for the city of Whitefish. I don't have an update for you this evening, and I don't think this is the time or place for that discussion, but Craig, if you had a very brief answer, I'd entertain it.
No, I'll just say that at the next work session, I believe it's the next work session, we will be doing an update on the water and wastewater system improvements, and I'll include information about the groundwater research.
And that'll be at a work session before the regular meeting if you'd like to attend. We do take public comment at those meetings as well.
I'm like Mrs. Maroka, is that I've lived in Whitefish for over 50 years. My husband was born and raised here. I feel like I've more than paid for multiple water treatment plants in the city of Whitefish over the years that I have. It's really frustrating to me that I have beautiful property that I can't water. I can't afford it. That doesn't have anything to do with the sewer rates, but I can't afford to water my lawn. If you look around Whitefish, most people don't anymore. It's very sad to see our community in that condition.
Thanks, Linda. Further public comment on this item? Rebecca?
Becca Norton, 530 Scott Avenue. I think this is causing heartburn amongst people that have lived here a long time, but I also think the city is meticulously prepared for this moment, because I sat in on that meeting 4 years ago when Chuck hired those consultants. So it's probably not something anybody wants to be doing, but we kind of have to do things like this periodically. We had a period where we didn't raise the rates, and everybody got used to that. But I think I would be probably voting for this. I just have two questions. I wish there was an update on how much leakage we have. I think the public should know that, since it was a quarter of our water. So maybe you guys could work that in occasionally. And the second thing is, as we go into warming, we do need to keep things alive for shade. So I actually think we need to be talking more to the citizens about how to keep trees alive. They take a long, slow watering, over 8 hours sometimes. But I don't think we want to see things dying just because there was a fairly punitive law written about water usage. So I'm not sure that if we need to revisit that at some point. This is a hard one. Good luck. Thanks.
Thanks, Rebecca. Further public testimony? Further public comments?
Mike Hauk, 323 Kalispell Avenue. I was born and raised here, just like Linda or Linda's husband and everything. And it is a shame to see the increase, although you guys may think it is pennies, but on a person that's on a fixed income and everything, it's substantial, especially with the way the taxes have increased. I just got an appraisal on my home. My taxes went up, or they're proposing that my taxes are going up $500. My fixed income did not go up to compensate for that. So it's just little bit here, little bit there, and before you know it, I'm eating dog food and cat food, and I can't afford to eat. My highest utility right now is my sewer and water. It costs me more to flush my toilet than it does for me to heat my house, and I think that is sad. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Further public comments? Not seeing any, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for discussion or a motion. Melissa?
I move to approve resolution number 19-30, is it?
It is.
An ordinance, resolution revising water and wastewater service rates and policies.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Hildner. Further discussion on the motion? Andy?
I'll make some of the same comments I made the last time we did this, and water and sewer is not a profit center for us. Water and sewer is something that we provide to the community because it's something we have to do and something the community needs, and we break even on it, and we try and put some money aside to fix it in the future when it breaks, and we don't make money on it. And generally, when we are forced to make changes in our system that are typically extremely expensive, i.e. the sewer plant's a very good example of that, that's an unfunded mandate. That's an unfunded mandate from the state. That's not us. We have to have a permit to discharge into the river, and the state tells us what that water can look like when it comes out of that plant. And that's the state's call. That's not our call. The state says you need to build a new plant, and we get stuck with a $17 million bill, which we have to pay for somewhere. Now oddly, a lot of people want to blame it on growth and development, but the funny part about it is we have a pretty small ratepayer base to pay for that $17 million. So the one thing that would help with a lot of that is if we had double the number of people flushing their toilets, because we'd have that many more people, and Craig just said it recently, our rates are actually going up a little bit less now than we thought they were going to, because we're using more of the service, which means we have more people paying for it, which means we have more revenue to fund the operation and the maintenance and the ongoing capital improvement. This is not something that we do, like I said, to make money. We do it to provide the service, and we do it as cost effectively as we possibly can. And that includes reducing the amount of water that we lose out of old lines, which we've done significantly over the last year. We do everything we possibly can, and we pay those rates too. I grew up here. I get it. I live in a house that I lived in 30 years. It's the same thing. I used to pay like $20. I pay $160 a month for my sewer and water now. I get it. That's a lot of money for sewer and water. I get it. It affects the affordability of housing, of all of those things. But if we don't pay for it with rates, then where are we going to pay for it? The money has to come from somewhere to run those plants, to treat our sewage so it goes into the river clean and doesn't go down to Flathead Lake and create a problem from Flathead Lake all the way out to the Pacific Ocean. We don't really have any choice. That's the hard part. That's why we go through the rate studies. That's why we look at all of the numbers. That's why we try and make it as equitable as we can across all of the classes of users. I pay a lot because I'm in the highest class of user. My system's expensive to run. I get that. So I pay it, and I pay it not willingly, and I don't pay it gladly, but I know it's just something I have to do. So we do understand. We're not just sitting here. Well, we do, and trust me.
Thanks, Andy. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. And the motion carries unanimously, Michelle. We will move on to item 6B, which is ordinance 19-20, an ordinance amending Title 11 of our zoning regulations, Chapter 2, Zoning Districts, Article 2L for the WB3 General Business District of the Whitefish City Code on a first reading. Wendy.
Okay, so back in 2015, when the downtown master plan was updated, one of the elements that came out of that plan was to do something to encourage folks to cross over into Baker Avenue and kind of expand our retail toward the west. And this was called the shopping loop, which is in blue on that particular map there. As part of that shopping loop, there were some ideas that came out to improve the sidewalks and parking so it reflected more what's in the downtown area, including angled on-street parking and the covered sidewalks and the wider sidewalks. To facilitate that, we're proposing a text amendment to look at the setbacks on that particular shopping loop. The existing regulations right now call for prevailing for a front yard setback, and then none for a side yard setback. So one of the challenges with the existing regulations along this designated shopping loop, if we really want to see the buildings built right to the edge of the sidewalk and have an opportunity for expanding those sidewalks, for the front yard, some of them, there is no prevailing. So like along Lupfer, there's like 3 different types of setbacks. What would be the prevailing? And so this is an attempt to unify all the buildings on Lupfer and then along First Street as well to ensure the future development accommodates the design with the on-street parking and the wider sidewalks. So we made a recommendation for a 5-foot setback on Lupfer on that east side, and then a 15-foot front yard setback on First Street along the shopping loop on both the north and the south side. And then also you'll notice on this particular map that there's some side setbacks, and so we suggested a 15-foot side yard setback on First Street if a building was going to butt along there. The planning board held a public hearing. Well, actually, they opened the public hearing in July, and then they continued it until August so we could look at this side yard setback issue. They unanimously recommended approval of the request, and there's a draft ordinance. After we had the public hearing, we did a little bit more thinking about how those setbacks actually would translate on the ground, especially if lot lines kind of got readjusted, and also visiting with members of the public. So we're suggesting, similar to what you folks did with the Wisconsin Avenue setback, where we called that out separately, that we create a railway district shopping loop section in the WB3. And so on page 171 of your packet, you'll find our suggestion of what that might be. So we've identified where the shopping loop is and then what the particular setbacks would be. One of the concerns that was brought up was if a side yard setback was 15 feet, someone may think that they could have 15 feet between buildings. But really what we want is if the side of a building is on First Street, that's when the setback would be 15. Otherwise, there'd be no setback. So again, the draft ordinance is the planning board recommendation. We would recommend that it's not changing content, it's just pulling it out for the shopping district. So can I answer any questions for you?
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy on her staff report? Any questions? Not seeing any. Thanks, Wendy. We did advertise for a public hearing on item 6C, which will be our own ordinance 19-20, and we'll hold that public hearing now. Any public comment on this issue? Any public comment tonight? Not seeing any. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion. Katie.
I would move to approve ordinance 19-20, an ordinance amending Title 11 zoning regulations, Chapter 2 zoning districts, Article 2L, WB3 General Business District of the Whitefish City Code.
Thanks, Katie. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Hennon. Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, and those opposed, like sign, and that motion carries unanimously as well, Michelle. Thanks, Wendy. We will move on to item 7A, which is consideration to approve a request from Whitefish Housing Group LLC for a 5-lot minor subdivision located on 6.364 acres along Highway 93 South, which is legally described as Track 3BB, Parcel 2 of Certificate of Survey 21092, located in Section 1, Township 30 North, Range 22 West, in Flathead County, Montana. Wendy.
Okay. So the request before you is a 5-lot minor subdivision. So the difference between a major and a minor is this has not gone to planning board. State law allows for these to come right to you folks without a public hearing. So we do it as a public meeting. So the property is a little bit more than 6 acres. The applicant is proposing 4 commercial lots and 1 residential lot along the west side of the subdivision. Access will be by a new access onto Highway 93 South, and they're proposing an east-west private road that will serve the lots, and a proposed kind of frontage road will provide access to the First Baptist Church to the south of the subdivision. The private road will extend all the way to the eastern property line of the residential lot, and an access easement will extend to the furthest western boundary of that subdivision. No variances are being requested, and no frontage improvements along Highway 93 South are proposed or required. The 2 zoning districts of this property are WB2, which is our secondary commercial district, and WCR, which is country residential. It is surrounded by churches to the north and south. It's undeveloped to the west, and commercial is to the east. The project is served by all services and facilities. We did notice adjacent landowners within 150 feet of the subject parcel, which is the requirement for a minor subdivision, and we posted the property on August 22nd. We didn't receive any comments when I was assembling the packet, but you have received a couple of comments that are on the dais for you. We review these according to the criteria in the subdivision regulations. Under effects of health and safety, the fire marshal has reviewed the project and has adequate access to the proposed lots with the proposed turnarounds, and he'll review the placement and design of any new hydrants prior to their installation. Again, the property will be served by all new fire hydrants. Access, again, will be off of Highway 93 South. When originally this property was kind of joined up with the church property to the south, and MDT gave those 2 parcels 2 accesses to the highway. So at some point, the church ended up with the northern access, so they're going to abandon that access that's at the church and then move it forward to this particular piece of property. And then there will be an easement along the frontage of one of the lots in order to provide access to the church. This will require an access permit from MDT. A TIS is not warranted at this point because of the potential range of commercial type uses. We just don't know exactly what might get built at some point. MDT does require the owner to complete a TIS as part of moving the access, and it's a change in use. So as such, the applicant submitted a traffic generation trip distribution report that's in your packet, identifying the potential range of uses and to begin the scoping process with the city and with the state for the TIS development. So if trip generation at the time of building permit exceeds 200 trips, Public Works Department will require a TIS at that time. So we're recommending a condition of approval for that. For the purposes of the traffic generation and trip distribution, the traffic engineer assumed 3 uses: a shopping center, high turnover sit-down restaurant, and hotel. These uses would generate 66 new AM peak hour and 81 new PM peak hour. But the actual TIS will bear out what's going to happen at the different intersections. There's no surface water, groundwater didn't find, or test pits didn't find any groundwater, and the Public Works Department's not going to require any groundwater monitoring. The stormwater plan will be required to be submitted to the Public Works Department prior to final plat. They're proposing on-site detention and treatment and then discharge to an existing MDT system at a pre-development rates. They'll be required to obtain approval from MDT, and we've recommended that as a condition of approval. And then all the drainage easements or drainage and appurtenances must be located in easements. The project is going to use city water, which is located in Highway 93 South. And as you know, DEQ has approved the deviation to the city of Whitefish to continue adding new users. So to date, the city has 448 allowable ERUs, and then this project will require 5 ERUs. The road that will access the subdivision off of Highway 93 will be a shared access and utility easement, and there will be no more accesses onto the highway permitted, so each of those individual lots won't have their own driveways on there. They'll have to share that internal road. And the road will be constructed within the commercial portion, but will have access to that residential lot. This extension could at some point connect to Baker Avenue Extension, but this Baker Avenue Extension is not a part of this project. This lot is just outside the area that we anticipate will be the Baker Avenue Extension. We are recommending that this road, this east-west road, be developed to a private street standard. It could become a pretty major road once Baker Avenue Extension goes through at some point in the future, and should be designed to city street standards. So the private street will be within a 60-foot right-of-way, including sidewalks and boulevards and street trees and streetlights, just like a regular street. Highway 93 south frontage is developed with streetlights and a meandering sidewalk. There's no landscaping, irrigation, street trees, there's nothing kind of out there at all. So the property owner will be obligated to landscape their frontage, irrigate, and maintain it. Staff recommends the applicant work closely with a landscaper or a landscape architect to design a landscaping plan with drought-tolerant plants, and they will also be obligated to maintain their sidewalk as far as plowing. It does comply with the growth policy, which is general highway commercial out in the front and then suburban residential in the back. The different zoning standards for the commercial area will be reviewed at the time of building permit. One other zoning regulation is they have a billboard on this property. I think it's the last one in town. When the zoning or the sign regulations were updated a bunch of years ago, 2003, it indicated that all billboards were required to be removed by 2010. So we are recommending a condition of approval that that billboard be removed as a condition of approval. So staff is recommending approval of this minor subdivision subject to 20 conditions. Just to hit some of the highlights. We want to have the private street design to meet the local access street standards. It'll be named. They need to obtain an access permit from MDT. We'd like to see landscaping along the highway frontage, and they need to maintain and irrigate it. All easements need to be shown on the face of the plat. They need to obtain approval from MDT to use stormwater facilities. And at the time of building permit, if the use is going to exceed 200 trips per day, then a TIS must be submitted to the Public Works Department for review and approval. The internal road is intended to be privately owned and maintained, but open to the public, and that the billboard be removed. Questions for you? If you had any engineering-specific questions, Doug is still here to answer those for you.
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy on her staff report? We'll start with Richard.
Yeah, Wendy, on page 198 of the packet, Parks and Open Space, it says the subdivision is exempt from parkland dedication as it is a non-residential subdivision, yet there is a housing component.
There's a residential lot, but the residential lot is not being subdivided. It's a split zone lot, and they're just putting the line where that residential lot line is.
To exclude
The
it.
area, yeah, to be excluded. So the area being subdivided is the commercial area.
Okay. Thanks.
Frank.
Wendy, this is probably it's irritated me forever now. If that sign was supposed to be out of here in 2010, why is it still there?
I don't know. I don't know if Angie has any background. I know John Phelps was kind of tackling those one by one, but I don't know what happened with this particular one.
I find it irritating that we should have to add that as a condition at this point in time to have that thing removed. And if we approve, assuming this gets approved, and I'm not assuming anything, what enforcement action do we have, or what limitation, how quickly must that thing be removed?
Well, that's some of the discussion I've been having with the applicant. Apparently, the lease goes until 2023, and they're willing to, work with us to see if they can break those leases. But as I understand, those leases are pretty difficult. I don't know if anyone has any other information about those. If for some reason the lawyers all visit and there's no way that that can be broken until 2023, we certainly could enter into a subdivision improvement agreement where we would hold funds, recognizing that that lease would not be renewed, and we would hold that money until the bond, or until the sign came down.
So what you're saying is that under current scenarios, even if we approve this thing, the likelihood of it being gone between now and 2023 is like zero.
I don't know the answer to that. But preliminary plats are good for 3 years, and folks can ask for extensions too, so, final plat may not come before that date as well.
Further questions for Wendy? I have one, Wendy. On page 316 of the packet, there was a letter, and this might be a question for Doug, from Whipple Consulting Engineers. It was a trip generation and distribution letter, and I believe they were just looking at hypothetical land use assignments in order to generate reasonable trip generation numbers for the development as a whole. And I'm just curious, when I look at this table, it has lots 1 through 4, lot 1 being a potential drive-in bank, lot 2 a shopping center, lot 3 a high turnover sit-down restaurant, and lot 4 a hotel. Has there been any discussion with the developer on what the reality of these potential uses actually going into play is? Is this what we're looking at here down the road?
I'm not sure exactly. It could be, but maybe Doug has a better idea.
Doug Petmeyer, TDH Engineering. At this point, that's all it is. It's a hypothetical. They do not have any guaranteed uses of anything. It's setting up,
entitlements,
developable lots, basically. And we tried to come up with a plan of what, might go in there. And again, like Wendy touched on, if and when a lot gets developed, MDT, for us to finalize that approach, they're going to want the full traffic study at that point. And so it took a while actually even to get to the point where they would agree to move that, because they don't grant any more approaches onto 93 in that corridor right there. But since this was just moving one, it's been granted. So that's going to be a requirement, and as soon as we know a use, then we can run the numbers. But at this point, we don't have a set user at this
Okay. Question for you, Doug, and maybe for Craig or Wendy, but are there significant differences between private street and public street standards? And why has a request been made for a private street designation?
So I'll go, and then I don't know if Craig wants to jump in as well. When we went to site review, one of the things we were looking at is if you go to a public street, obviously the city maintains that, but there's also additional setbacks. And so I think what the agreement was is we'd build a local street, and the actual street section that's being conditioned is a full City of Whitefish local street. So it's curb gutter, boulevard, street trees, sidewalks both sides. It's just gonna be privately owned and maintained, and that way it's gonna be in an easement so the public can use it. The city just won't maintain it.
So it'll be privately owned and maintained, yet open to the public,
Correct.
but meet
Including
generally city
the
street standards.
And including the sidewalks as well. That's one of the
Curb
things.
gutter, sidewalks, boulevard trees,
Yep. Oh, it's a.
decorative lighting.
I believe the condition actually references the local street standard, which is
Okay.
a specific detail.
Okay. My last question, unless there's others, letting me continue here. On the site plan, the access will be off 93, obviously just south of Park Knoll Lane. I don't have that. Michelle, do you mind putting up that previous map that you had of the lot layout and the road alignments? There you go, thanks. So access will be off Highway 93 South, which is shown, in blue, obviously, between Lot 2, 3, and 4 will be the access road that'll connect in with the church, correct?
Correct.
Is immediately when you take a left off 93 South, are you proposing then an immediate left with another, is that a future frontage road? Is it just to feed that one lot?
If you, when did you have that site? The way we envisioned it, and we sketched it again because we don't know the exact uses, is it's shown as, it's an easement, and so it could be, it's not designed to be a city street. The discussion was the east-west road, the private road, that will be the focal point. It'll look like a city street, and then as you turn off on to that, the church actually has another entrance that they'll use. This is just so they don't lose that one, and so we're gonna grant an easement, and it could be, I mean, I doubt it'll be curb and gutter, but it'll be paved 24 feet wide and within an easement. And so we would not be able to build anything, no obstructions in there. It'll be a paved surface, but it wouldn't be like.
On the east side of Lot 4.
On the east side of Lot 4,
Parallel with
correct.
93.
Yeah.
Reason I'm asking this is we're in the middle of a 93 South corridor study, and I'll ask Wendy or Dave this question since Hillary's not here. We've had a lot of discussion about frontage roads and backage roads that'll be a component of that plan. And as I last recall, I believe some of the preference of the committee and from the visioning sessions we've held with the public was that the preference would be backage roads, not frontage roads that basically increase the footprint of asphalt and concrete right adjacent to Highway 93, that we wanted some level of buffering. So question to you, looking forward, as that plan's adopted by the council, it would be nice if this preliminary plat was in conformance with that vision. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, in this particular circumstance, it doesn't appear to be a full frontage road because it's only accessing that lot where the church is, directly due south. It doesn't, the way it's configured, at least in the preliminary layout, is, there's buildings that front on 93 on the north side of that. And so, this doesn't look to me like it'd be a full frontage road. It might be an access road to access that lot to the south, but in general, it's not gonna be contiguous all the way up 93, and they're providing for that through road that's gonna go back to eventually, which would be the Baker Avenue, which would function as a backage road.
So could that through road teeing in with the church property, Doug, be better situated on the interior of Lot 4? To address some of the recommendations coming out of our 93 study?
I think we could look at something like that, but I think like what Dave was saying, this doesn't go the full length of the frontage. So it would function basically like you're pulling into a parking lot. You're gonna see that frontage, the main entrance road is gonna look like your street.
Well, and I think that's what we're trying to mitigate with
So
our
you
plan
don't look
is,
like a road, like it's a
like
road.
you have 93, you've got the boulevard, then you've got, you know, a road right off the property line or the right-of-way setback, and then another 25-foot strip of asphalt.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
trying to get some buffering in between 93 and the uses that are a component of that lot.
And I think, you know, the thing with that is the church also, because their north entrance is right there, is trying to keep it on the frontage so it still functions somewhat like it does today. So that's why it's shown in its current location. And then there was enough room there, I think that was left enough space to add parking as well on one side, so it would really function as a drive aisle almost, just in an easement. The intent is not to make it feel like a street or a frontage road. It's really a secondary access for the church if they want to. Because typically you wouldn't connect these pieces. You'd keep them separate. But because they want access to that second, we have to punch it through.
What's the width between the Highway 93 right-of-way and the east side of that, quote, frontage road easement?
I believe it's 20 feet, because I think on the sketch the site plan that we did, we had parking all through there. Minimum length of a parking spot's 20 feet. So
Parking within the east side of the easement in the Highway 93 right-of-way?
I don't know if I can point.
Page
Yeah.
page 332 shows a site plan that shows the potential layouts, obviously. Subject to change, it's just a draft or whatever. Page 332.
Yep.
332.
It's probably, yeah, there you go. It's probably more like 40 feet because there's a gap between, so the parking just for a visual, that shaded area, that's 20. And then you've got another, looks like 20 feet. So I would say.
To the
yeah,
property line?
To the
and
property line.
Then, of course, the right-of-way,
Yep.
plus the existing sidewalk.
So there's probably, I mean, there's a pretty good buffer actually between what we're showing as that drive aisle and the actual edge of Highway 93. It's not, it wouldn't be like right next to it.
And you indicated what, about 40 feet?
I think it's more than, because there, so if you look at the parking, that's 20, plus it's another, it looks like about 20 feet just to the property line. And then the way that property is, we've got that meandering sidewalk, then you get out to the curb. So I'd guess it's probably around 60 feet from the curb to the edge of this easement.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers that.
It did. Thanks,
Okay.
Doug. I appreciate it.
Anything else? Thanks.
Any further questions for Wendy or Doug for that matter? Andy?
Get my mic to work here, not for Wendy or Doug, but probably Dave or, maybe Wendy or Angie, I'm not quite sure. We did receive a letter from an attorney this afternoon, I see, and I'm just wondering if we have any response to that, and why, if we typically require a phasing plan with phased preliminary plats, when we have a plat submittal that clearly says phase 1 and phase 2, and we don't have a phasing plan, why would we not require that in this case?
So as I understand it, the residential lot is just at some point in the future. These folks don't have any plans to do any development. They are here to do just the commercial part. So it isn't really a phase subdivision like we'd imagine, you know, like a typical phase subdivision where they have cul-de-sacs and they do this phase and then they come back and do that phase. All the access and water and sewer and everything is going to be available to that lot. So it isn't like how we typically hear a phased subdivision. So it's just going to happen at some point in the future, just not probably by these folks.
Might have just been an unfortunate way to title it on the map?
I think so.
And Andy, if I can chime in, I'm sorry.
What's that?
Because can I chime in? Can you stop me? So generally a phase subdivision is, you know, you do the preliminary plat and then the different phases go to final plat at different times. That's my understanding, and Doug can completely correct me if I'm wrong, that this is all going to final plat at the same time. So it's really not a phase subdivision. It is, I mean, it's all going to final plat at the same time. They don't really have any plans for the residential parts, so that's why it's not really included. And I will say that the attachment that was included the Appendix B to Michelle Tafoya's letter is actually not even an ordinance. It's an appendix to our subdivision regulations, so it's the, I guess, statement that we would somehow be approving this in violation of the Whitefish City Code or state law is not accurate at all.
So then it would come through as a final plat with 5 lots.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
something could be done to that lot in the future.
In the
because-
future.
okay.
It meets the zoning and, yeah.
One last question for Doug. And I don't know if you can answer this, Doug, but Lot 4, again, referencing page 332 of the packet, on what I'll call a site plan, looks awfully to me like a footprint of a future hotel. What's the square footage of that footprint?
I believe it's just under 13,000 square feet.
Yep.
And then also just to respond to Andy, I think you're spot on. That was a poor choice of words on the map. But what was explained is exactly right. It'll all be platted at the same time. Water, sewer, the roads will have to be built, everything.
Okay.
There's no phased component.
Okay. Thanks, Doug.
Yep.
Further comments, questions, or can I have a motion, please, and we'll go forward from there? Richard.
I will move to deny the consideration to approve a request from Whitefish Housing Group LLC for a 5-lot minor subdivision on 6.364 acres located along Highway 93 South, as legally described in our agenda.
Is there a second to the motion? Is there a second to the motion?
If I get a second, I'll address it.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Williams. Richard.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be pretty straightforward until I really dug into the geotech report. And all of a sudden at the geotech report, they're talking about loadings for a hotel. And so then I explored more about what the plan is, and it is over 13,000. It's 13,400 and something square feet for the hotel, without discussing the impervious surface as shown on page, whatever it is, that page. When I see the idea of another hotel, I'm reminded that I can't think of any time, but certainly not in the last 4 years, has anyone come to me and said, Richard, we need another hotel. In fact, people have come to me and said, we do not need another, and fill in the blank, hotel in Whitefish. And so this is really concerning to me, that really what we're trying to do is approve something that will create not only another hotel in Whitefish, but I think that there are sufficient, we could develop sufficient findings in finding 1 and finding 2 to support that denial. But I'm not in favor of this preliminary plat, given the fact that once we approve it, we are sure to see somebody come with a hotel plan. And if you look, let's see if I can find it real quick, like, give me one more try here. As a point of reference, and while I'm looking through for another map, in terms of finding 1, we have reached the point for a divided highway on Highway 93. We've reached that 30,000 vehicle trips a day. So this is going to, as you pointed out, Mr. Mayor, at least the preliminary discussions of what might go in on these lots would certainly increase before MDT ever got around to developing the divided highway. So that's my issue with finding 1. Finding 2, under wildlife, I think that this is inadequate. I understand the FWP weighs in on this, but if those of you who drive to the airport early in the morning, you'll see this is where all the dead deer are that cross the highway, at least part way, in the early morning and early evening hours. And if I don't find it in the next 30 seconds or less, I'll let it rest there. Now, I can't find real quick like. I should have earmarked it, but I did not. So, anybody else wants to weigh in?
Thanks, Richard. Katie?
I seconded just to hear Richard's motion. I will not be voting for the denial of this project. I just wanted to have a healthy discussion.
Further comments? Katie?
Can expand on that. I think right now we're voting on the subdivision, preliminary plat, and as uses come through, we're looking at uses by right generally within the zoning district, and as the projects come through for approval, if they need to come through within a conditional use permitting based on size or usage, then we can do such. It'll come back before council, but as of now, I don't think that we have strong enough findings for denial of this project.
Thanks, Katie. Further discussion from the council? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. And the motion does fail on a 5-1 vote, with Councilor Hildner being the lone vote in favor, which will need a second motion to the opposite effect. Katie?
I will move to approve a request from the Whitefish Housing Group LLC for a 5-lot minor subdivision on 6.364 acres located on Highway 93 South, legally described as Track 3BB, Parcel 2 of the following geographic, as described in our packet. I'm not going to read that to you guys.
Thanks, Katie. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Hartman. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry on a 5-1 vote, with Councilor Hildner voting in opposition. We're going to continue pushing on here. And I'm going to go to item number 8, which is communications from our acting city manager, Dana Smith. Dana, anything additional to report on between September 11th and September 16th?
I do have some.
Thanks.
First of all, we would invite everybody to join us with this year's TIPA Cop to support Special Olympics. Our police department is spearheading that event at Mackenzie River Pizza from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. And that is on the 24th of September. Thank you. Didn't have my notes. And just another update for the viewing public, coffee with the city manager in the interim has been canceled. And future considerations of bringing that back will be made at a later date. We did just this evening around 7:30 receive an update from BNSF regarding the cleanup at the river. They're continuing to work on the river cleanup. Following initial work to remove the contaminated soils, BNSF determined that there was additional work that needed to take place along the shorelines, and they will have to use a temporary barrier, a bladder dam, to address the removal of this material. So that will take place on September 18th, a Wednesday, with excavation of the shoreline to continue that next day on Thursday. And then the apparatus will be removed Friday. So that's the update. They're continuing to work with the U.S. EPA and the Montana Department of Environmental Quality. And they did confirm that they have GPSed all vegetation for us and will work closely with us on restoration of that property. The Montana League of Cities and Towns Conference will be held in Billings this year, October 2nd through the 4th. We have quite a few directors attending. Craig this year will participate in one of the sessions on creating climate resilient communities, so to help share about our climate action plan. And then last Friday, Senior Planner Wendy Compton-Ring and I met with Madeline Forbes. She is Senator Tester's Montana Field Representative to discuss affordable housing and ways that the federal government could assist in addressing those needs. It's a significant focus for Tester, and she is continuing to move throughout the state and look at what type of plans and what type of plans have been in place in other communities. And then the last one that I have on update is, as you know, we will start construction on Spokane Avenue, Railway to Depot. In that section, we could lose 22, or we will lose 22 all-day spaces. And as we just learned at our work session, those spaces are in high demand. I spoke with Bridger and Craig Workman, and we talked about possibly moving that all-day parking to the west side of Depot Park in the interim while they're doing the construction. And we feel that the enforcement would be fine. Obviously, Tuesday evenings, they would have to move earlier due to farmers market, but we only have a few more dates set for that. So I think we'll move forward with that. It's a temporary change, so it's our understanding that doesn't have to be approved by council, but I wanted you to be aware of that, as we do know that parking is utilized heavily by both school district and employees in town. And so that is all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Dana. Any questions for Dana from the council? Frank?
Dana, thanks for thinking through that parking issue. You and Craig, that's good thinking. I'm glad we're on top of that. Thanks.
Thanks, Dana. We will move on to item 9A, which will be Resolution 19-31, a resolution appointing Finance Director / Assistant City Manager Dana Smith as our new interim city manager. Just before I ask for a motion and a vote from the council, I just wanted to make you aware that Dana was asked and graciously accepted to serve as our acting city manager back on September 6th. I wanted to thank her for stepping up and taking that opportunity. Since that time, myself and a few councilors have met with Dana out of need just to discuss kind of our short-term needs as a city. We evaluated both the position descriptions for the city manager as well as the finance director, and essentially determined what roles and responsibilities might be deprioritized in the short term, just given there's only so much capacity we can squeeze out of Dana, because in the interim, she will be serving in both capacities, both as interim city manager if the vote comes down this evening, as well as our finance director. There are a host of committees that Dana will be involved with, that Adam was certainly involved with. Several of those committees will continue Dana working on those on a pretty much full-time basis. There may be a few that she either delegates to other department directors or just selects to attend those meetings when there's items of pressing needs for her attendance. And also, just looking over the next 6 months, we all obviously have a slew of high priority projects ranging from the snow lot to the Baker Avenue underpass to the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, and the list goes on and on. So a few of us spent some time more or less prioritizing Dana's responsibilities for the next couple months. So with that said, I just wanted to make the request of directors, given what I've just shared with you. Obviously, there's a heavy lift ahead of us, and I would ask that you chip in where you can to give Dana a hand as she navigates this path over the next 3 months. With that said, I will need a motion appointing Dana as interim city manager.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve Resolution 19-31, a resolution appointing Finance Director, Assistant City Manager Dana Smith as our interim city manager.
Thank you, Frank. Is there a second motion? Seconded by Councilor Hildner. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, and those opposed, like sign, and the motion does carry unanimously.
Have fun, Dana.
Thanks, Dana. We'll move on to item 10. Well, no, we won't. We'll stay with item 9, and we'll go with communications from the City Council. Richard, would you like to start this evening?
Yeah, since it came up, thanks for that update on the river cleanup. It probably comes as no surprise that I'm really irked that Burlington Northern and their public relations people have failed to update the people of the city of Whitefish as to what's going on when you see the river turn into a milk color and people have, and I don't think it's just the weather, have stopped using the river. And it's probably because of the river condition. I don't know how best to get their attention, but in my view, Burlington Northern has failed the city with regards to its cleanup plans and the conditions of the river. I think it's one of those things that should have frequent communications, either through the newspaper, radio, and the city's website, all manner of communication. There's no reason that they shouldn't do that. I've received a couple of calls on the statue of the trainman and child that's not any longer in Depot Park. I understand it may be in storage someplace, but I think, again, maybe on the city's website, we should refer to that, and so that people feel comfortable knowing that it didn't get sold to the scrap metal people. That would be a shame. So I would hope that we could get some of that information out. And finally, as I did 2 weeks ago, I would remind the viewing and listening public that this is apple, pear, plum season, and the bears are out and about day and night. So if you have fruit in your yards, please pick it up and dispose of it properly. Probably not in a 300-gallon dumpster, because the bear will just turn that over and spread its contents. Thanks. That's it for my public service announcement for today.
Thanks, Richard. Andy?
I have nothing. Dana, thank you. And I would say one other thing is included that, because I have the photos of the bear walking down the handrail on my neighbor's deck eating out of their bird feeder. So bird feeders are a problem too. So.
Thanks, Andy. Ryan?
No comment.
Thanks, Ryan. Katie?
No comment.
Thank you, Katie. Frank?
We did receive a letter this week from Jen Metzmaker talking about, or concerned about, our weed ordinance. I've spoken with Maria a little bit about it as it relates to parks, but I'm hoping we'll be able to come up with an answer to her problem, which is the casual read of the ordinance, the way it's currently perceived, I think, is that people are allowed to manage rather than eradicate noxious weeds. What I think we ought to do is make sure that whatever we propose here through enforcement or through revisions to our weed ordinance, that we address both of those issues to make it clear that we're about eradication and we're about doing something in the short term rather than over a 6-month period of time. I know it's a process issue for enforcement, so if that's the issue, I hope we'll address that and with whatever you bring to us. Thanks.
Melissa? Thanks, Frank.
On the subject of weeds, is there an update for Summers Avenue? My understanding there is going to be some reseeding. Do you know what the schedule is for that?
I can give you the schedule, have you talk to Craig about that schedule, but they will be coming out to address the cheatgrass that is now along the boulevard, and they will be, we've sent out letters to homeowners along Summers Avenue, so if you're outside of Summers Avenue, you might not know, but Craig can fill you in more on the details.
Okay.
Yeah, we did a mowing about a month ago where we mowed and bagged all of the boulevards along Summers Avenue. We've also done the first spraying, but there's a 2-year warranty on that work, and so we'll be spending some time over the next couple of years making sure those boulevards are coming in with actual turf and not noxious weeds.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Maria, just curious, how often do we spray and treat our public right-of-ways, our boulevards? And I just asked that question because I've definitely noticed an increase in the proliferation of knapweed in particular.
Yeah, it's been a big year for knapweed this year. The conditions have just been right for it. Yeah. We spray a couple of times in the spring, a couple of times in the fall. It's a timing issue, and each weed, has its own time period throughout the season. And so sometimes, in the middle of the season, if it's really wet and we can't get to spraying, you're going to see them developing a little bit. a little bit more than we would like to see, but a few times every year. Spring and fall is the best.
Is it effective now?
Yes, we can do it now.
Okay. I might want to just take a drive down Edgewood towards City Beach and look at the North Boulevard,
Will do.
if you don't mind. Yeah, I know. I had a quick suggestion, comment. You know, we've been discussing at our 93 South meeting the parcel that we annexed conditionally on the northeast corner of Highway 93 and 40. I do know that the owner of the property on the southeast corner of Highway 93 and 40 is going to be coming to council in the next couple months with a similar request to conditionally annex that property. The property on the northeast corner of the intersection is actually 3 different lots, so it's already subdivided. Tonight, we saw another application come through with a hotel potentially pushing 13,000 square feet, obviously done intentionally to avoid the process of coming through for a conditional use permit because they kept it under 15,000 square feet. I think this council really needs to reconsider the threshold for the square footage for a CUP. As you know, it's right now at 15,000 square feet. The only way we're going to have any meaningful review for these larger developments on 93 South, and I'm talking specifically to the B2, and I turn to Dave for a recommendation, and I hope that we have the momentum tonight to give him that direction. A recommendation on what that threshold value should be in terms of square footage before a project requires a conditional use permit by council, because I think we're going to continue to see many of these applications come forward like we did this evening, in particular on our gateway intersection at Highway 93 and 40 in the next probably 6 months to a year, guessing. So I would compel the council to reconsider our discussion that we had a few months ago related to this subject and ask Dave Taylor to bring us back a draft text amendment that he feels is appropriate to address this issue. But I clearly need the support of the council for that.
Mr. Mayor, you have my support, but would it be appropriate, or is there a mechanism for an emergency resolution to
I don't think
change
so.
that? That's not, okay. But you certainly have my support. If we don't, we're toast.
Yeah, I
We're-
mean, we have
we've wasted
solid
money on the
development
93
standards in place,
corridor.
but unfortunately, some projects slip through the cracks because they don't exceed that threshold square footage. So this would just be another review opportunity and mechanism for the council. So,
Likewise.
okay, Dave, can we go ahead and see some draft language at our next council meeting? Perhaps that could come under your communication.
Absolutely.
Great, I appreciate it. Is there anything further from staff? How about council? Thanks for coming tonight. We are adjourned.